My name is Evelina, and I am 28 years old. I never expected that winning $12 million would be both the best and worst thing to ever happen to me. One minute, I was celebrating financial freedom. The next, I was watching my parents transform into people I barely recognized. The golden child my brother suddenly needed my money for his future. Years of being overlooked crashed into the present as they tried to take what was mine. If you think family always has your back, my story might change your mind. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe, and join me as I reveal how winning the lottery exposed the truth about my family. I grew up in a middle-class suburb of Chicago, in a house that always felt divided. From the moment my younger brother Jackson was born, he became the center of our family universe. My parents saw something special in him that they never seemed to see in me. The living room walls were covered with his sports trophies and academic certificates, while my own achievements gathered dust in a drawer somewhere. When Jackson needed expensive soccer gear, my parents found the money. When he wanted to attend a prestigious summer camp for future business leaders, they took out a loan. Meanwhile, I wore hand-me-downs and worked at the local grocery store after school to save for college. I remember the day Jackson got accepted into a private high school. My parents threw a party and invited the entire extended family. That same year, I made the honor roll for the fourth time straight, and all I got was a distracted, "Good job, Evie," as my mom scrolled through her phone. Despite everything, I still loved my family. I told myself they meant well, that they were just trying to nurture Jackson's obvious talents. I convinced myself that one day they would see me too. That delusion kept me going through years of being the family afterthought. After graduating high school, I had to fight for every inch of progress. My parents made it clear that their college fund was reserved for Jackson, who would obviously need it for an Ivy League education. So I took out modest loans and worked 2 jobs to put myself through community college. I worked at a coffee shop in the mornings and waited tables at night, squeezing classes in between shifts. I was exhausted most of the time, but there was a certain pride in knowing I was making my own way. When I finally earned my associate's degree in business administration, my graduation ceremony was attended by only my grandmother. My parents and Jackson were at a baseball tournament in another state. Grandma Helen took pictures and treated me to dinner afterward, telling me how proud she was. That meant more to me than she could ever know. By 23, I had saved enough to move into a tiny apartment in the city with my friend Tasha. It was cramped and the heating was unreliable, but it was mine. Independence tasted sweeter than I had imagined. Still, family ties are hard to break, and I dutifully returned home for Sunday dinners twice a month. Those dinners were always the same. The moment I arrived, Mom would ask cursory questions about my life, before quickly shifting the conversation to Jackson. My father would beam as Jackson talked about his business classes, his internship opportunities, his girlfriend from a well-connected family. I would sit quietly pushing food around my plate, wondering why I subjected myself to this ritual of invisibility. My current job as an administrative assistant at Meridian Marketing paid the bills, but not much more. I dreamed of starting my own small business someday, a boutique marketing agency focused on helping local businesses. I had notebooks filled with ideas and plans, but launching a business required capital I simply did not have. Sometimes at night, I would calculate how many years of saving it would take to gather enough for a modest startup. The answer was always depressing. Last year, my boyfriend Kyle broke up with me after I canceled our anniversary dinner to help my mother when she called crying about an argument with my father. Kyle had been patient with my family situation for 2 years, but that night he finally reached his limit. "They will never see you, Evelina," he said as he packed his overnight bag. "And as long as you keep running when they call, neither will you." His words hurt because they contained a truth I was not ready to face. After he left, I cried for hours, not just for the relationship, but for the pattern I could not seem to break. Financial struggles were a constant in my life. My student loans, while modest compared to many, still took a significant chunk of my monthly income. My car was 15 years old and required frequent repairs. I lived paycheck to paycheck, with very little left for savings or emergencies. Still, I managed to put aside $50 each month toward my business dream. At that rate, I calculated I would have enough to start in approximately 27 years. Meanwhile, Jackson had graduated from Northwestern University and was talking about getting an MBA. My parents had remortgaged their house to fund his education, a fact they mentioned frequently during family gatherings, with sidelong glances that seemed designed to remind me how much they had sacrificed for him while I had to fend for myself. Your brother will pay us back once he's successful, my mother would say. His potential is worth the investment. The implication that I lacked similar potential was never stated outright, but hung in the air nevertheless. Years of this treatment had left me with complicated feelings about money, success, and self-worth. Deep down, I wondered if perhaps they were right, if Jackson truly deserved their faith and investment in a way that I did not. This was my life before everything changed, before numbers on a ticket transformed my financial reality overnight and exposed the true nature of my family relationships. Looking back, I should have seen the signs, should have protected myself better. But how do you prepare for the people who raised you to reveal that their love comes with conditions you never knew existed? Buying lottery tickets was my one small indulgence. Every Friday, I would stop at the convenience store near my apartment and spend $5 on Mega Millions tickets. It was less about the possibility of winning and more about allowing myself to dream for a weekend. What would I do with millions? How would my life change? These pleasant daydreams were worth more than the coffee I could have bought instead. That Friday in April was no different from any other. I stopped at Sunny's convenience on my way home from work, exchanged pleasantries with Mr. Patel behind the counter, and purchased my usual tickets. He wished me luck as always, and I responded with my standard, "If I win, your store gets famous." It was not until Sunday morning that I remembered to check the numbers. I was sitting at my small kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through social media on my phone. Almost as an afterthought, I pulled up the lottery website and glanced at the winning numbers from Friday night's drawing. The coffee mug slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I stared at the screen, then at my ticket, then back at the screen. The numbers matched. All of them, including the mega ball. "This is not real," I whispered to myself, heart pounding so hard I could hear blood rushing in my ears. I checked again and again. I pulled up 3 different websites to confirm the numbers. They were all the same. With trembling hands, I called Tasha, who was visiting her parents for the weekend. "Tosh," I said when she answered, my voice barely functioning, "I need you to check something for me." "Evie, are you okay? You sound weird. Just, can you look up last night's Mega Millions numbers and tell me what they are?" She must have heard the urgency in my voice because she didn't question me further. I heard tapping as she looked it up. "Okay, got them. They are 8, 15, 24, 32, 47, and the mega ball is 3. I looked down at my ticket. The same number stared back at me. A strange calm washed over me. "Tasha, I won." "Won what?" "The jackpot." "I have all the numbers." There was silence then. "Evelina Marie Foster, if you're joking right now, I swear to God." "I am not joking. I checked multiple times. I won $12 million. What followed was a series of screams so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Tasha immediately said she was driving back to the city and would be at my apartment in 3 hours. The lottery office was closed on Sunday, so I had 24 hours to process what had happened. I paced my apartment, alternating between euphoria and disbelief. I hid the ticket in a book, then worried it would get lost, so I put it in a Ziploc bag and tucked it into my bra. I was terrified of losing it before I could claim my prize. Monday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Tasha did the same, and we drove together to the state lottery headquarters. The whole way there, she kept looking at me like I might disappear. "Your life is about to change forever," she said as we pulled into the parking lot. "Are you ready?" I wasn't. How could anyone be? But I nodded anyway. The process of claiming a major jackpot is not as simple as I had imagined. There were forms to fill out, identification to verify, and decisions to make. The officials explained that I had 2 options. Take the lump sum payment of approximately $7.2 million before taxes, or receive the full amount over 30 years as an annuity. "Most winners take the lump sums out," the lottery representative explained. "But there are tax advantages to the annuity option." I sat in the sterile office, trying to wrap my head around numbers that seemed unreal. After taxes, The lump sum would leave me with approximately $5 million, while the annuity would provide smaller but substantial yearly payments. Take the lump sum, Tasha whispered. You can invest it and potentially make more than the annuity would give you. I chose the lump sum. It would take several weeks for the payment to be processed, they told me. In the meantime, they strongly recommended I consult with financial advisors and attorneys before making my winning public. In my state lottery, winners couldn't remain completely anonymous, but I could claim the prize through a trust to provide some privacy protection. As Tasha and I left the building, a staff member offered one last piece of advice that would prove more valuable than I realized at the time. Be careful who you tell about your winnings. Money changes how people see you, even people you've known your whole life. I nodded politely, thinking of my family. Should I tell them? Part of me wanted to share the news to see the looks on their faces when they realized I had achieved something remarkable, even if by pure luck. Another part worried about how it might change our already complicated relationship. The lottery office connected me with a financial advisor who specialized in working with sudden wealth clients. Jennifer Zhao was a straight-talking woman in her 40s who laid out the realities of my new situation without sugarcoating anything. Most lottery winners go broke within 5 years, she told me during our first meeting. Your goal should be to avoid becoming a statistic. Jennifer helped me understand the importance of setting up a solid financial plan before spending a cent. We discussed investment strategies, tax implications, and the benefits of placing most of the money in various trusts. She strongly advised against making any major lifestyle changes or large purchases for at least 6 months. Live your normal life while we set up the proper structures, she said, and be extremely selective about who knows about your windfall. I decided to follow her advice and keep my winning private for the time being, even from my family. I would tell them eventually, but only after I had a comprehensive plan in place and had processed the change myself. I did put in my 2 weeks' notice at Meridian Marketing, explaining that I had received an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative and wanted to pursue my dream of starting my own business. That night, Tasha and I celebrated quietly at our favorite neighborhood restaurant. We didn't order champagne or anything extravagant, just our usual pasta dishes and a shared dessert. The fortune felt too fragile, too surreal to celebrate lavishly. To new beginnings, Tasha said, clinking her water glass against mine. And to finally having enough, I replied. As we ate, I shared my vision for the future. How I would invest most of the money safely, buy a modest but comfortable condo, and fund my marketing agency. I talked about setting up a scholarship for students like me, who had to work multiple jobs to get through school. I mentioned traveling, seeing places I had only dreamed about. What about your family? Tasha asked eventually. When will you tell them? I pushed my pasta around the plate. I don't know, not yet. They're going to find out eventually, Evie. I know. I just want to have everything in order first. I need to be firmly grounded before I deal with whatever their reaction will be. What I didn't say, what I barely admitted to myself, was that I was afraid. Afraid of how my newfound wealth would affect my family's perception of me. Afraid it might magnify the existing dynamics rather than heal them. Afraid most of all that money would become another reason for distance rather than connection. I couldn't have known then how prophetic those fears would prove to be. I managed to keep my lottery win private for exactly 3 weeks and 4 days. Then, despite claiming through a trust, my name was leaked to a local newspaper that ran a story with the headline, "Local Administrative Assistant Wins Multi-Million Jackpot." The article included my name, approximate age, and the neighborhood where I lived. I was at work serving out the last few days of my notice period when my phone rang. It was my mother calling in the middle of a Tuesday, something she never did. "Evelina," she said, her voice unusually warm and excited. "Why didn't you tell us your good news? We had to hear about it from the Andersons next door." My stomach dropped. "Mom, No matter, she continued, not waiting for my explanation. "Your father and I are just so thrilled for you. This is such a blessing for our family." The phrase "our family" made me pause. In all the years I'd struggled financially, my problems had always been mine alone. "We're having a special family dinner this Sunday," she announced. "To celebrate your good fortune, I'm making your favorite pot roast." Pot roast wasn't my favorite. It was Jackson's. But I didn't correct her. Mom, I'm still processing everything, I said carefully. The money isn't even in my account yet. All the more reason to have family around you during this transition. We have so much to discuss. The enthusiasm in her voice was unprecedented. In all my adult life, I couldn't remember my mother ever sounding this excited to see me. A small, hopeful part of me wondered if perhaps this was the beginning of a new chapter in our relationship. That Sunday, I arrived at my parents' house to find extra cars in the driveway. Inside, not only were my parents and Jackson waiting, but also my Aunt Diane and Uncle Frank cousins I rarely saw, and Jackson's girlfriend Bethany. Everyone turned as I entered, faces lighting up with smiles that seemed just a bit too bright. There she is, my father boomed, coming to embrace me. Our lucky girl. The hug was confusing. My father wasn't a physically affectionate man, at least not with me. Jackson, yes, but our interactions were usually limited to brief nods and occasional handshakes. Throughout dinner, I experienced the novel sensation of being the center of attention. My mother kept refilling my plate and asking if I wanted more wine. My father reminisced about teaching me to ride a bike and other childhood memories I was surprised he remembered. Jackson asked about my future plans with what appeared to be genuine interest. Underneath the warmth, however, ran an undercurrent that made me increasingly uncomfortable. There were too many questions about specific amounts, about when exactly I would receive the funds, about what financial advisors I was working with. You know, my father said casually as my mother served dessert. I've always had a good head for money management, helped several friends with their retirement planning. I nodded politely, not mentioning that my parents had remortgaged their house twice and had virtually no retirement savings of their own. And your mother and I sacrificed so much to give you and Jackson a good upbringing, he continued. Those piano lessons, the braces summer camps. I couldn't recall having piano lessons or attending any summer camps, but before I could say anything, my mother jumped in. Family is so important, isn't it, Evelina? The way we all support each other through thick and thin. Share our blessings. Jackson cleared his throat. Speaking of family support, Evie, I've been working on a business plan for a tech startup. It's going to revolutionize the way small businesses handle inventory. I'd love to show it to you sometime. Jackson's always had such a mind for business, my mother added proudly. He just needs some initial capital to get it off the ground. What about your own business ideas, Evelina? Aunt Diane asked. You majored in business, didn't you? Associate's degree, my mother corrected quickly. In business administration. The subtle diminishment was so familiar I almost didn't notice it. Almost. Actually, I said, finding my voice. I'm planning to start my own marketing agency specializing in digital strategies for local businesses. Oh, honey, my mother said with a small laugh. Marketing is so competitive these days. Wouldn't it be safer to invest in your brother's venture? He's got the education and connections to make it a real success. The conversation continued in this vein, with every mention of my plans being gently but firmly redirected toward Jackson's needs and potential. By the time dessert was finished, I felt drained and confused. This was supposed to be a celebration of my good fortune, yet somehow, it had transformed into another showcase for Jackson. I made an excuse about needing to feed my cat, I didn't have one, and prepared to leave. As I gathered my purse, my father pulled me aside. Your brother has been working on this business idea for years, he said in a low voice. This could be his big break, and with your newfound resources, you could help make it happen. What's family for, right? I nodded noncommittally and extracted myself as quickly as possible. In my car, I sat for several minutes trying to process what had just happened. The sudden attention, the thinly veiled suggestions, the calculated warmth all felt wrong. I called Tasha as soon as I got home. They didn't even ask how I was feeling about any of this. I told her, pacing my apartment. It was all about how my money could help Jackson, how my winnings were a blessing for the family. Are you surprised? Tasha asked gently. I shouldn't be, should I? But part of me hoped, I don't know, that maybe they'd just be happy for me. That for once something good happening to me would be about me. People show you who they are when money's involved, Tasha said. And your family's showing you exactly who they've always been, just more obviously now. I sank onto my couch, a realization settling over me. They don't see this as my money. They see it as family money that I'm temporarily holding. Bingo. What do I do? Set boundaries now, Tasha advised, before this gets worse. Because trust me, Evie, based on what you've told me about your family over the years, this is just the beginning. I didn't want to believe her, but deep down I feared she was right. The next few weeks brought a dramatic shift in my family's behavior toward me. My mother, who had previously called me perhaps once a month, now called almost daily. The conversations always began with questions about my well-being, but inevitably turned to comments about family loyalty and shared resources. Blood is thicker than water, Evelina became her favorite saying. In this family, we look out for each other. The irony of this statement, given my years of feeling overlooked, wasn't lost on me. My father took a different approach, focusing on my supposed financial ignorance. These financial advisors will take advantage of you, he warned during one call. You need someone who has your best interests at heart handling this money. Someone like family. One Tuesday afternoon, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced, something she had never done before. She carried containers of homemade food and wore an expression of maternal concern I couldn't recall ever seeing directed at me. You're looking thin, dear, she said, pushing past me into the apartment. Are you eating properly? I made your favorites. The containers held lasagna and apple pie, neither of which had ever been my favorites. They were, however, dishes my mother often prepared for Jackson. As she bustled around my small kitchen putting food into my refrigerator, she casually mentioned that the roof on my parents' house needed replacing. The estimate came in at $14,000, she sighed. Your father and I just don't know where we'll find that kind of money. We've already stretched ourselves so thin putting Jackson through college. The hint was about as subtle as a sledgehammer. A week later, my father invited me to lunch at a restaurant much fancier than he would typically choose. Over appetizers, he presented me with a folder. I've been doing some research, he said, sliding it across the table, about investment opportunities for your windfall. Inside was information about various high-risk investments, including cryptocurrency and foreign real estate ventures. Dad, my financial advisor, has already set up a conservative investment strategy, I explained. He waved a dismissive hand. Those advisors play it too safe. You could triple your money with some of these options. I didn't point out that most of these opportunities look suspiciously like scams. Instead, I thanked him for his concern and changed the subject. Throughout the meal, he repeatedly mentioned his expertise in money management and how he could help me navigate my new wealth. Jackson took a more direct approach. He invited me to coffee and arrived with a professional-looking presentation about his business idea, complete with projections that showed miraculous growth within the first year. All I need is initial funding of $1.5 million, he explained, showing me a slide with elaborate charts. With your investment, I can guarantee returns of at least 20% annually. When I asked questions about his methodology or market research, he became defensive. I have an MBA, Evie. I know what I'm talking about. This is basic business strategy. Then surely you could get traditional investors interested, I suggested. His expression darkened. Why would I give equity to strangers when my own sister has the resources? This could be a family business. And the pressure campaign extended to family gatherings as well. At a dinner celebrating my grandmother's birthday, I found myself surrounded by relatives who had previously shown little interest in my life. Suddenly, second cousins wanted to discuss their children's college funds, and an uncle I barely knew mentioned his medical bills. Only my grandmother seemed immune to the money fever that had infected the family. As others mingled after dinner, she pulled me aside. They're circling like vultures, aren't they? She observed, her eyes sharp despite her 83 years. I was startled by her bluntness. Grandma, Don't pretend with me, child. I've lived long enough to see how money changes people, or rather, reveals who they truly are. She patted my hand. Be careful. Remember that your life is yours, not theirs to direct. Her words were a balm to my increasingly anxious spirit. At least one family member saw what was happening and cared about me beyond my bank account. That comfort was short-lived. Later that evening, I overheard a conversation between my parents in the kitchen as I was coming down the hallway. She's being stubborn, my father was saying in a low voice. We need to be more strategic. I've been bringing food, calling more, showing interest in her life, my mother replied. But she's still resistant to helping Jackson. The trust fund idea might be our best angle, if we can convince her it's for her own protection. I froze, not wanting to hear more, but unable to move. They were strategizing about me planning how to manipulate me into giving them access to my money. It wasn't just opportunistic requests, they were actively plotting. The next day, Jackson's girlfriend Bethany, who had never shown particular interest in me before, asked if we could have sister time together. Over manicures she insisted on paying for, she spoke enthusiastically about their plans to start a family in a few years. Jackson is going to be such an amazing father, she gushed, and you'll be the cool aunt who spoils her nieces and nephews. The conversation eventually turned to their hopes for a large house in an exclusive suburb private schools for their future children, and how important family support would be in achieving these dreams. It's so wonderful that your lottery win came at this perfect time, she said, examining her freshly painted nails. Just when Jackson is ready to launch his business. The universe works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? The implication was clear. My money was viewed as a timely resource for Jackson's dreams, not as my own opportunity for financial security and pursuit of personal goals. The pressure continued to mount. My mother began mentioning health concerns, suggesting she might need expensive treatments their insurance wouldn't cover. My father talked about postponing retirement because of their financial situation. Jackson sent me articles about successful family businesses and the importance of sibling support. Each night I found myself increasingly anxious, lying awake, analyzing conversations, and second-guessing myself. Was I being selfish? Did I owe my family this money? The rational part of me knew the answer was no, but years of family conditioning made it difficult to trust my own judgment. The situation reached a breaking point when my mother called sobbing about Jackson's lost opportunity. He had a meeting with potential partners, she cried, but they backed out when he couldn't show he had initial funding secured. This was his chance, Evelina, his one big chance, and it's slipping away because you won't help your own brother. The guilt was overwhelming, even as a voice inside me whispered that something wasn't right about the story. Jackson had claimed his business idea was revolutionary, yet he couldn't convince a single investor to take a chance on it. That night, I barely slept. The weight of my family's expectations and manipulations pressed down on me like a physical force. For the first time, I began to understand that my lottery win hadn't solved my problems as I had hoped. Instead, it had created an entirely new set of challenges I felt ill-equipped to handle. The culmination of my family's campaign came on a Saturday afternoon when my parents and Jackson arrived at my apartment unannounced. My father carried a leather portfolio, and all three wore expressions of determined resolve. "We need to talk, Evelina," my father said as they filed into my living room. "As a family." My mother nodded earnestly. "This is about securing all our futures." A sense of dread filled me as I offered them seats. Whatever this was, it had been carefully planned. My father opened the portfolio and removed a stack of legal documents. "We've been consulting with a family attorney," he explained, laying the papers on my coffee table, "about the best way to protect and manage your winnings." I glanced at the top document. The header read, "Foster Family Investment Trust Agreement." "What is this?" I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling I knew. "It's a family trust." My father explained, his tone professional, as if he were conducting a business meeting. "You'll transfer your lottery winnings into this trust, which will be managed by your mother and me as trustees. This protects the money from outside claims and ensures it benefits the whole family." I flipped through the pages, my hands growing cold, as I grasped what they were proposing. The trust would give my parents control over the majority of my winnings with provisions for family investments that they would approve. "You want me to give you control of my money?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not give, honey," my mother corrected quickly. "Share. Manage together as a family." "Let's be realistic, Evie," my father added. "You don't have experience handling this kind of wealth. You've never even managed investments before. We're trying to protect you from making costly mistakes." Jackson leaned forward. "Think of it as pooling our resources. My business acumen, Dad's experience, Mom's practical sensibility, and your windfall." The pause before the word windfall spoke volumes. In his mind, my contribution was merely the money, nothing else. The trust includes provisions for your basic needs. My father continued. A reasonable monthly allowance health insurance, even a down payment for a modest home eventually. Allowance. The word echoed in my mind. They wanted to put me on an allowance from my own money. What about my marketing agency? I asked. The business I've been planning to start? My mother and father exchanged glances. Well, dear, my mother said gently, as if explaining something to a child, we think it might be better to focus on more established business ventures, like Jackson's startup. My business has real potential, Jackson interjected. With the right funding, we could all benefit. Your marketing experience could even be useful for our promotional materials. I felt as though I were drowning, watching my dreams being dismantled and rearranged to benefit everyone but me. A lifetime of being secondary in my family was culminating in this moment where they felt entitled to take control of the one stroke of luck that had ever come my way. Did you know? My father said, his voice taking on a harder edge, that in some states, lottery tickets purchased during residence in a family home could be considered family property. I stared at him. What are you saying? Our attorney mentioned that there might be grounds to argue that since you were living under our roof when you first began purchasing lottery tickets years ago, we could have a claim to the winnings. The implication was clear sign our agreement, or we might take legal action. I haven't lived with you in 5 years, I said, anger finally breaking through my shock. And I bought this specific ticket from my own apartment. But the habit started in our home, my mother added, using money you earned while living with us. It's complicated legally. I stood up, papers clutched in my hand. Let me get this straight. You want me to sign over control of my lottery winnings to you. You'll decide how it's spent, with Jackson's business being the priority investment. I'll get an allowance for my own money. And if I don't agree, you're threatening to sue me. No one is threatening anything, my father said, though his expression contradicted his words. We're trying to find the best solution for the family. The family, I repeated. The same family where I had to put myself through college, while you paid for Jackson's private university. Where my achievements were ignored while his were celebrated. Where I've been an afterthought for 28 years. That family, you're being dramatic, Jackson said dismissively. We're offering you a chance to be part of something bigger than yourself. Something with real potential, not some small-time marketing scheme. My business plan isn't a scheme, I replied, my voice rising. And even if it were, it would be my scheme to pursue with my money. This is exactly why you need guidance, my father said. You're being emotional instead of practical. Jackson has the education and vision to multiply this money. His potential has always been exceptional. And what about my potential? I asked. Has anyone in this family ever considered that? My mother sighed. Evelina, we've always supported you in pursuing realistic goals. But let's be honest, you don't have Jackson's business instincts or education. That's not your fault, but it's something we need to acknowledge when making financial decisions of this magnitude. Each word cut deeper than the last. The message was clear. I was not considered capable or worthy of managing my own good fortune. In their eyes, my only value was the money I could provide to further Jackson's ambitions. I am not signing this, I said firmly, dropping the papers back on the table. My father's face hardened. Then you're making a serious mistake, one that could have significant consequences for your relationship with this family. Are you saying you'll cut me off if I don't give you my money? I asked, incredulous despite everything. We're saying, my mother interjected, that family supports family. If you can't understand that basic principle, then perhaps you need to reconsider what family means to you. Jackson stood, his expression cold. I always knew you were jealous of me, but I never thought you'd sabotage my future out of spite. The accusation was so absurd, so completely backward that I almost laughed. Jealous, I spent my entire life being treated as less important, less valuable, less worthy of support than you. And now that I have something you want, suddenly I'm supposed to hand it over in the name of family, the same family that never showed up for me when I needed them. We gave you everything? My mother exclaimed. A home, food, and education. The basic legal requirements of parenthood are not special gifts. I responded, finding strength in my growing anger. And you did not pay for my education. I did while working multiple jobs and taking on debt. My father stood gathering the documents with sharp movements. I can see this conversation is unproductive. We're giving you a chance to do the right thing, Evelina. Think carefully about your choices. Family is forever, but so are the consequences of turning your back on us. As they prepared to leave, Jackson paused at the door. You know I always defended you when Mom and Dad said you were selfish. Guess I was wrong. After they left, I collapsed onto my couch, shaking with a mixture of rage, hurt, and disbelief. The apartment felt eerily quiet after the confrontation. I stared at the wall, trying to process what had just happened. My own family had tried to take control of my money through manipulation, guilt, and finally threats. The people who should have been happiest for my good fortune had instead seen it as an opportunity to advance their own interests at my expense. Tears came then, hot and painful. I cried for the family I had always longed for, but never truly had. I cried for the years spent seeking approval that was never going to come. I cried for the little girl who had believed that if she just tried harder, achieved more, gave more, she would finally be valued equally. Through my tears, I called Tasha. Her voice was like a lifeline. They did what? She exclaimed after I explained. I'm coming over, don't move. 20 minutes later, she was at my door with ice cream and a bottle of wine. As I recounted the details of the confrontation, her expression shifted from shock to outrage. They threatened to sue you for the ticket. After everything, they actually tried to intimidate you into handing over your money. She shook her head in disbelief. Evie, this is beyond dysfunctional. This is emotional abuse. The word abuse made me flinch. It seemed too harsh, too final. Despite everything, these were still my parents, still my brother. Maybe they really do think they're doing what's best, I suggested weakly. Maybe in their own way. Well, stop making excuses for them, Tasha said firmly. Look at me. Would you ever treat someone the way they've treated you today? Would you ever try to manipulate and threaten a family member into giving you their money? Put that way, the answer was clear. No, never. Then why are you making excuses for them doing it to you? The question hung in the air, unanswerable, because she was right. I had spent my entire life making excuses for my family's treatment of me, rationalizing their behavior, convincing myself that deep down they must love me equally, even if they didn't show it. Today had shattered that illusion completely. I had seen the truth in their eyes, heard it in their words. To them, I was not an equal member of the family, deserving of the same love and respect as Jackson. I was a resource to be utilized, and now that I had something valuable, they felt entitled to it. It was perhaps the most painful realization of my life, but also strangely the most freeing. For the first time, I saw the situation with complete clarity, unobscured by hope or wishful thinking. What do I do now? I asked Tasha, feeling utterly lost. First, she said, squeezing my hand, you protect yourself and your money. Tomorrow, we're calling your financial advisor and your lawyer. If they're really considering legal action, you need to be prepared. I nodded, the reality of my situation sinking in. The lottery win that should have brought joy and opportunity had instead exposed the painful truth about my family relationships. I had reached rock bottom emotionally, but at least now I could see clearly what I was dealing with. The time for denial was over. The next morning, I called Jennifer Zhao, my financial advisor, and explained the situation. Her response was immediate and clear. I've seen this before, she said, her voice firm. We need to make sure your assets are protected. I'm setting up an emergency meeting with the trust attorney who's been working on your estate plan. By that afternoon, I was sitting in a conference room with Jennifer and Sylvia Morales, a trust and estates attorney, with a reputation for handling difficult family situations. Based on what you've told me, Sylvia said after hearing the full story, your parents have no legal claim to your lottery winnings. You purchased the ticket as an adult from your own residence with your own money. Their argument about the habit beginning in their home is legally nonsensical. Her words should have been reassuring, but I still felt anxious. They seemed very confident. That's a manipulation tactic, she explained. They're hoping you won't consult an actual attorney and will instead cave to their demands out of fear. Can they really sue me? Anyone can file a lawsuit for almost anything, Sylvia acknowledged. But that doesn't mean they'll win. In fact, in this case, I'd be surprised if any reputable attorney would even take such a case. Jennifer and Sylvia worked with me to ensure my financial structures were ironclad. We accelerated the establishment of proper trust to protect my assets with me as the sole trustee. We created a comprehensive estate plan that made my wishes clear. We even discussed strategies for dealing with potential future financial requests from family members. Throughout these meetings, I felt a strange mix of sadness and determination. I was mourning the family I had always wanted, while simultaneously taking steps to protect myself from the family I actually had. The practical aspects were important, but I knew I also needed to address the emotional impact of what had happened. On Tasha's recommendation, I scheduled an appointment with Dr. Lorraine Patel, a therapist specializing in family dynamics and financial trauma. Dr. Patel's office was a calm, welcoming space that immediately put me at ease. She listened without judgment as I shared my family history and the recent confrontation over my lottery winnings. What you're describing, she said gently when I finished, is a lifetime of unequal treatment that has now reached a crisis point because of your changed financial circumstances. I nodded, relief washing over me at being truly heard and understood. The feelings you're experiencing, grief, anger, confusion, are all natural responses to this situation, she continued. Your family has violated your boundaries in a profound way, and that breach of trust is deeply painful. Over the next few weeks, Dr. Patel helped me work through my complicated emotions about my family. She introduced me to the concept of emotional boundaries, something I had never really understood before. Boundaries aren't about punishing others, she explained. They're about protecting yourself. You have the right to decide how you want to be treated and to limit your interaction with those who cannot respect your boundaries. This was a revolutionary concept for me. Growing up, my needs and feelings had always been secondary to Jackson's. The idea that I had the right to prioritize my own well-being felt almost transgressive. With Dr. Patel's guidance, I began to draft a letter to my parents. The process was therapeutic, allowing me to express my feelings while maintaining a sense of control over the narrative. I wrote multiple versions, each one helping me clarify my thoughts and emotions. Meanwhile, I threw myself into planning my business. With the financial constraints removed, I could finally pursue my dream of starting a marketing agency, focused on helping local businesses develop effective digital strategies. I researched office spaces, began drafting a business plan, and enrolled in entrepreneurship courses at a local university to strengthen my knowledge base. The classes connected me with Professor Marcus Washington, a former marketing executive who had built and sold several successful agencies. After hearing about my business concept, he offered to mentor me. You have good instincts, he told me after reviewing my preliminary business plan. And your focus on local businesses is smart, especially with your community connections. That's a valuable niche many larger agencies overlook. His validation was incredibly meaningful. After years of having my abilities questioned and dismissed by my family, having an experienced professional see potential in my ideas was powerfully affirming. With Professor Washington's guidance, I refined my business concept, developed a more detailed implementation strategy, and began identifying potential clients. The work was challenging, but exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I was pursuing my own vision without financial constraints or familial disapproval holding me back. As I gained confidence in my business plans and worked through my emotions in therapy, I finally felt ready to confront my parents again. This time, however, I would be prepared and in control. I arranged to meet them at a neutral location, a quiet cafe, where we were unlikely to run into anyone we knew. I arrived early, rehearsing what I wanted to say, and reminding myself of the boundaries I needed to establish. My parents arrived together, expressions guarded. Jackson was not with them, which was a relief. This conversation needed to be between us. Thank you for meeting me, I began once we were seated. I wanted to talk about what happened and where we go from here. My father started to speak, but I held up my hand. Please let me finish first. To my surprise, he fell silent. I've consulted with attorneys who have confirmed that your claim about having rights to my lottery winnings has no legal merit, I said, keeping my voice steady. But honestly, the legal aspect isn't what hurts the most. What hurts is that you would try to manipulate and threaten me to gain control of something that is rightfully mine. My mother's expression tightened. We were only thinking of what's best for the family. No, I corrected her gently but firmly. You were thinking of what's best for Jackson, as you always have. My needs and dreams have always been secondary if considered at all. That's not fair, my father protested. We've always supported both our children. Have you? I asked. Did you remortgage the house to pay for my education? Did you attend my community college graduation? Have you ever shown the same interest in my career as you have in Jackson's? Their silence was answer enough. I'm not saying this to make you feel bad, I continued. I'm saying it because if we're going to have any relationship moving forward, we need honesty. I cannot and will not give you control of my money. I will not be funding Jackson's business ventures. I am going to use my winnings to build my own future, including starting my own business. My father's face reddened. So you're turning your back on your family after everything we've done for you? No, I replied calmly. I'm establishing healthy boundaries. I still want a relationship with you both, but it needs to be based on mutual respect. My financial decisions are not up for discussion or negotiation. This is about your jealousy of your brother, my mother said, her tone accusing. It always has been. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of what Dr. Patel had taught me about not being drawn into old patterns. This is about me finally recognizing my own worth and refusing to be treated as less valuable than Jackson. I deserve the same respect and support that you've always given him. And if we don't agree with these boundaries of yours? My father asked. What then? Then I'll need to limit our contact until you can respect them. I said the words painful but necessary. I love you both, but I won't allow myself to be manipulated or made to feel guilty for taking care of myself. The conversation continued for another hour, cycling through accusations, defenses, and occasional moments of genuine communication. In the end, we reached an uneasy impasse. They didn't fully accept my position, but they understood I was serious about my boundaries. As we prepared to leave, my father issued what felt like a final warning. You're making a mistake, Evelina. Turning away from family never ends well. I'm not turning away, I replied. I'm simply asking to be treated with the same respect you give Jackson. The door remains open, but the terms have changed. Walking away from that cafe, I felt both drained and liberated. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground with my parents, clearly articulating my needs and boundaries. Whatever happened next, I had taken a crucial step toward building a life defined by my own values, rather than their expectations. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Years of family dynamics couldn't be reshaped in a single conversation. But I was no longer the same person who had allowed herself to be overlooked and undervalued. The lottery hadn't just changed my financial situation. It had catalyzed a profound shift in how I viewed myself and my relationships. As painful as the confrontation had been, it was also necessary. I had taken control of my narrative and set the stage for whatever came next, whether that included my family or not. 6 months after winning the lottery and facing the subsequent family crisis, my life had transformed in ways both expected and surprising. My marketing agency, Watershed Digital, was up and running with 3 employees and a growing client list. I had moved into a comfortable but not extravagant condominium in a vibrant neighborhood, the first home I had ever owned. Most importantly, I had developed a new relationship with myself, one built on self-respect and confidence, rather than the constant seeking of approval that had defined my earlier years. The journey hadn't been easy. After our confrontation at the cafe, my parents had maintained a chilly distance for several weeks. Jackson had been more direct, sending a scathing email accusing me of destroying the family and sabotaging his dreams out of spite. I had read it once, discussed it with Dr. Patel in therapy, and chosen not to respond to the baiting. Instead of engaging with the drama, I focused on building my new life. Watershed Digital specialized in helping small local businesses develop effective online presences. Our first major client was a family-owned bakery that had been struggling since the pandemic. Within 3 months of implementing our strategy, their online orders had increased by 70%. Their success became our best marketing tool, bringing in referrals from other small businesses in the area. Running my own company was challenging, but deeply fulfilling. Each decision was mine to make, each successive validation of my vision and abilities. The confidence I gained from building something meaningful extended to other areas of my life as well. I had always wanted to give back to my community, but had lacked the resources to do so in significant ways. Now I could make thoughtful, charitable donations to causes I cared about. I established a scholarship fund for first-generation college students at my former community college, covering not just tuition, but also books, transportation, and childcare expenses, the kinds of hidden costs that had made my own education such a struggle. Therapy with Dr. Patel continued to be a cornerstone of my healing process. Under her guidance, I worked through the complex grief of losing the family I had always wanted, but never truly had. We explored the patterns of behavior I had internalized growing up, the tendency to minimize my own needs, and seek validation from those who were incapable of providing it. Healing isn't linear, Dr. Patel reminded me during one particularly difficult session. There will be days when old wounds feel fresh again. The goal isn't to never feel pain, but to develop healthier ways of responding to it. Those words proved prophetic as I navigated my evolving family dynamics. 3 months after our confrontation, my grandmother called asking if she could visit me. I welcomed her, warmly grateful for the one family member who had consistently shown me unconditional support. Over tea in my new living room, she shared her perspective on the situation. "Your parents aren't bad people," she said, her hands cupped around her mug. "But they've been blind to their favoritism for so long they can't see it anymore. It became their normal, and now they're struggling to understand why you won't accept it as yours." Her insight helped me view the situation with more compassion, though it didn't change my boundaries. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" I asked her. She patted my hand. "People can change when they're ready. The question is whether you can find peace, regardless of whether they do." That wisdom stayed with me as I navigated occasional tentative contact with my parents. My mother had begun calling every few weeks, our conversations carefully avoiding any mention of money or Jackson's business. My father sent brief, awkward text messages about neutral topics like weather and sports. It wasn't the warm, open relationship I had once longed for, but it was something, a fragile bridge being constructed one plank at a time. Jackson's situation had taken an interesting turn. Without my investment, he had sought traditional funding for his business idea. Apparently, venture capitalists had asked tougher questions than he anticipated, pointing out fundamental flaws in his business model. His startup had launched, but struggled from the beginning, closing after just 4 months. I felt no satisfaction in his failure. In fact, I had offered to connect him with small business advisors I had met through my own entrepreneurial journey, an offer he had rejected with a curt text, "I don't need your charity." Tasha remained my rock throughout this period of transition. She had been promoted to office manager at her accounting firm and moved into the condo across the hall from mine. Our Friday night wine and movie tradition continued, though now in more comfortable surroundings. "Remember when we used to have to check our bank accounts before ordering pizza?" she asked one evening as we lounged on my sectional sofa. "Look at us now." I did look at us, and what I saw filled me with gratitude. We had both grown so much, not just in financial security, but in confidence and self-knowledge. Money had changed my circumstances, but the real transformation had come from within, from learning to value myself enough to stand up for my own needs and dreams. New friendships entered my life as well. Through entrepreneurship classes and business networking events, I connected with other women building their own companies. There was a special bond that formed with people who understood the unique challenges and triumphs of creating something from scratch, of taking risks on your own vision. Sandra, who ran a sustainable clothing boutique, became a particularly close friend. Like me, she had overcome family disapproval to pursue her dreams. The people who matter will eventually come around, she told me over brunch one Sunday. And the ones who don't, well, they're telling you something important about their capacity to love you as you are. As the months passed, I developed a new relationship with my wealth as well. The initial shock and anxiety had faded, replaced by a mindful approach to money as a tool rather than an identity. I lived well, but not extravagantly focused on experiences and security, rather than status symbols or excessive luxury. Some of the most profound changes were internal. I no longer measured my worth through others' approval. I recognized manipulative behaviors quickly and established boundaries without guilt. I celebrated my own achievements rather than downplaying them. These shifts didn't happen overnight, but gradually, steadily, as I continued to work on myself and surround myself with healthy relationships. On the anniversary of my lottery win, I took a day off work and hiked to a scenic overlook outside the city. Sitting on a rock watching the sun play across the landscape below, I reflected on the tumultuous year. The money had changed my external circumstances dramatically, but the most significant transformations had been internal. I had learned that family is defined by love and respect, not merely by blood. I had discovered my own strength and resilience in the face of manipulation and rejection. I had built a life aligned with my own values, rather than others' expectations. Most importantly, I had learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in self-worth, in the courage to stand up for yourself, in the wisdom to set boundaries with those who cannot respect them, and in the freedom to create your own path. These were lessons no amount of money could buy, yet they were the most valuable outcomes of my unexpected fortune. As I hiked back down the trail, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey hadn't been what I expected, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against family pressure or expectations? How did you handle setting boundaries with loved ones who couldn't respect your choices? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize their own well-being. Remember, your worth isn't determined by others' opinions of you, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stand firm in your own truth. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to honor your own path wherever it may lead.